Hey guys, it is Allison Creamer, and I am here again at the Daily Grind. And today we are going to talk about the Hampton Roads flood insurance market. My guest today is Janet, and I'm going to have her introduce herself as well as her company and your years of experience. So, Janet, thanks for joining me.
Sure, thanks for having me. My name is Janet McCaskey. I'm the owner of McCaskey & Associates Insurance Agency. I'm a small woman-owned business, which is really nice. And I've been in the market, just celebrated 10 years. So,
good for you.
Yeah,
so you're past the whole new business mark.
I'm past the whole new business thing, yeah. So it's really great. I work with several different carriers. Flood, though, is very specialized. There's not a whole lot of people out there offering it. So just a handful of companies, so you just kind of got to look at what you're buying.
Exactly. Well, so today we're going to hit just a few bullet points, and really what I want to get from this is, having somebody who understands flood insurance, not just a traditional insurance agent, especially if you have a special kind of property. You want somebody who's got some experience in the business. So when as a real estate agent, I'm looking at some flood zone numbers and stuff. So our area is identified in a numerical value of whether or not flood insurance is needed. If you want to kind of explain what that means. So if somebody sees flood zone X or flood zone, AE, things like that.
Sure. Well, you have to look at it this way. Any area can flood. Just because you're in a preferred zone doesn't mean you won't flood. We've had a lot of that in Hampton Roads this year, that areas that didn't traditionally flood have flooded. X is considered a preferred zone, so if you're rated in that, it's just saying it's less likely to happen in that area.
Well, we're all in a potential flood zone because we're on the coast.
Absolutely.
It's just whether or not the lender is going to require. So X means
it is a preferred zone, and it won't be required as far as the mortgage is concerned.
And so your rate is going to be a lot less.
Absolutely.
Because it's a choice.
The max available on any policy in a preferred or in a flood zone is $250,000 on the structure or $100,000 on the contents. Now that's according to FEMA. And for a preferred policy, saying not in a flood zone, it runs about $450 a year.
So that's not bad.
So it's not bad, and you don't have to have those maximums. So maybe your house is not worth quite that much. That's just the max available.
Okay.
After that, you have to go into a private market situation.
All right. And then what would be the zone that somebody needs to be concerned of if they happen to notice it's in? Is it AE?
AE is a very prevalent one here in the Hampton Roads area. We do have some other zones that are called wave zones. Those are more really close to the oceanfront kind of thing. Sandbridge will have a lot of those. But AE is pretty traditional in this area if it's going to be in a flood zone.
So we might find AE in places like Windsor Woods, which people wouldn't expect to be in a flood zone. Downtown Norfolk?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And so as a real estate agent, before we started this, we were talking about, getting people prepared to either sell a home or buy a home. We have access to general information online. But if an agent is aware that it's in a flood insurance, we were talking, why would they disclose or not disclose that? And so you don't want to be the bad guy when the person comes to get the insurance.
Well, I found a lot of times they find out it's in a flood zone when they're at the closing table, a day before you're closing, and the mortgage company pops up and like, oh, we just pulled this and now it's in a flood zone.
And our contracts, I was explaining that to you, it basically says that if the buyer still qualifies with loan ratios for flood insurance, it is not a reason to back out of the contract. So if somebody's listening to this and they're considering buying a house, they might want to make that a provision, or they might want to do some preliminary phone calls, give you a call, and maybe kind of say, hey, these are the areas that we're looking at. Do you have any knowledge? Before they get too deep, they could probably start communicating with you about it.
I would say definitely consult, the insurance agent that has experience in the flood. I'm qualified with smartflood.gov. I've actually gone through their training seminars. I'm actually a preferred vendor on their site, so if you went to the smartflood.gov to do any kind of research, I'm going to pop up there in Hampton Roads. There's very few of us that are on there. But you want to make sure, again, before you get into a contract, you don't want to find out on the backside that now you've got an extra, $100 a month going towards flood insurance, especially if you're on a huge budget, even though you might loan qualify for it.
Yeah.
Can you actually
Well,
live
a house
that way?
in Windsor Woods is around the $200 mark.
Right.
So $100 a month is a huge difference in house payment.
Absolutely.
I mean, that can make or break somebody. If you're talking about oceanfront properties and, an extra $200 or $300 a month might not be so bad in that budget. But it is important to kind of have your agent and your insurance agent.
And it depends on where your house is in that. If you qualify for $300 and it's $200, you might have that playing room. But if it's flip-flopped around, then you might be over your budget.
Well, a few years ago, I guess it may be 4 or 5 years now, might be a little bit longer. There was a lot of guideline changes for FEMA where they were trying to equalize the playing field,
Yes.
I think, on the cost of insurance.
That's still happening.
It's still happening. So briefly tell me, how is that affecting maybe the people that are getting into the market that are now having to buy flood insurance?
They're seeing bigger price tags.
Yeah.
FEMA had taken it over 4 years, a 25% rate increase. So if you had a policy at $1,000, the first year you got a 25% rate increase, now you're at $1,250. Well, next year you got another 25% on top of that for a total of 4 years until they got you to the point where the subsidy from the government was minimized.
Gotcha.
So, that could be a drastic change for someone who maybe didn't have to have insurance.
And now they do.
And now they do.
So existing policyholders saw increases in increments
25%.
to where it equalized it.
Yes.
And the new policyholders coming in were just hit with the full premium
Just
all
hit
at
with
once.
The whole thing all at once.
There
if you
was
were
no
buying a new
step.
home. Right.
Wow. Unbelievable. So I know that there's some remediation companies out there that can help lower the cost of flood insurance, and that's going to be things like flood vents.
Right.
Is there any, I've seen raising the air conditioner up,
Yes.
things like that. So there is a term, what is it, the
Elevation.
the elevation and the mean flood,
Base flood zone.
base flood zone. So when somebody is talking about all these things, as a consumer who's looking for flood insurance, probably the best person to call is you to ask, what does that mean?
Sure. I'll be glad to explain it to them. I mean, and it's going to vary from house to house. This is not cookie cutter.
Right.
Every house is going to be unique in where they are. Like I said, we were talking earlier, 2 houses side by side, identical construction. One could be in a flood zone and one not.
Exactly.
So it really is very specific to the
and
home.
and they need to have a little patience on trying to get this information,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
I mean, give you a few days. It's not as easy as logging onto the computer and popping it up and it's done.
And it also depends on, talking about what would help lowering costs, an elevation certificate.
And those run about $400 or $500, I think.
We've got some companies that'll do around $350 in
Okay.
the area, so that's definitely another idea to shop. Ask the question, how much do you charge to come out and do them? If you have a current certificate from a company and your flood zone has changed, which has happened, they've changed the rating on that, or perhaps you've done an improvement to your home, that company may give you a break on that elevation certificate to come out. You raised your air conditioner unit, you raised your hot water heater, coming back out to put those specifics in place for that elevation certificate. And again, that elevation certificate is very specific to that house.
Right. It's not the area, the neighborhood.
It's not the area, the neighborhood.
Specifically
It's
that
very
home.
specific to that home. And I get people all the time, we're like, well, my next door neighbor doesn't even have to buy flood insurance, but I do. And I'm like, again, it's very specific to that home.
Maybe they just haven't been caught yet either.
Maybe they haven't been caught yet, too. I see a lot of people, if their homes are paid off, they might be selling their home that's paid off, but the buyer is going to have to purchase it for the loan. Where the buyer or the seller didn't have to have it because they own the house free and clear.
So it's a good practice as listing agents and buyer's agents to, in my opinion, to kind of front some of this, especially if you've been in the market and you kind of have a inkling that there might be flood insurance needed.
Right.
If you're a buyer and you're driving around neighborhoods and you happen to notice that everybody's air conditioner's on stilts, that could be a good indicator.
Could be a good indicator.
Or you can see the water from the home.
A body of water near the home, yes. Which is really funny. Ocean View, you would think, you can definitely see ocean from Ocean View, and a lot of the areas there are not in a flood zone, believe it or not.
When you go down Ocean View, you look to the left, and there's a lot of homes that are way up high on hills.
But common sense would tell you if you can see the Atlantic, you might want to buy flood insurance.
So we kind of got through our basic interview when it comes to flood insurance. Now, I know that this wasn't real meaty and specific, but really what I wanted the listeners to understand is if they're home shopping, they might want to connect with a really good insurance agent who understands flood insurance just to kind of get an overview of what to expect, and you would be a perfect person to call. The second thing is pay attention to where they're buying and kind of do their own personal assessment if they happen to see flood vents and they see air conditioners.
The neighbors.
Not in Windsor Woods. You might have one with it and one without it.
True, but they can give you an idea of if the area has ever flooded.
Exactly.
So maybe, trust me, they'll probably know if the next door neighbor's house is flooded and theirs didn't, because they're going to be really happy that they got away with it.
That's true.
So,
and one of the best tips that I think out of this whole session right now is we are in a coastal area, and it's almost like the moisture and termite thing. It's not if, it's when. And,
It's been a long time. We haven't had a major one since 2003.
Yeah.
Hurricane. And it is hurricane season.
And if it costs less because it's not required, it just might be something good to put in place.
And just so you know, you can purchase flood insurance when you're purchasing the home. There's no waiting period. But if you're a current homeowner and you decide you want it, there's a 30-day mandatory wait.
So don't call when the hurricane is about to
in the
come.
Atlantic. It's not going to help you
work.
any. I actually get really busy, believe it or not, once we go into a hurricane warning.
Speaking of that, once we get to that, if we have closings set up, don't they halt the closings?
They halt, yes.
So
now, if I have you already underwritten and everything's done, they will honor it. But if you called me and said, hey, I'm closing tomorrow, I can't help you.
Yeah.
Most of my carriers, once we go under a warning from the National Weather Service, all of my carriers will shut down. So I can't bind any. I can
and
quote
we may
you all
have to
day long.
delay a closing.
You may have to delay a closing. I mean, like I said, I can quote it all day long. I just can't bind any kind of coverage for you to go to the closing table. So,
well, that's a good tip.
It's something to know. Yeah, it's definitely, you don't want to wait to the last moment to go shopping for the insurance. So
yeah. Well, Janet, go ahead and tell people again your name, your company name, where they can find you, and
Sure.
We're going to go ahead and put all of your contact information in the show notes, your links to your website, things like that. But
Okay.
you can go ahead and tell them where you're located and how they can get a hold of you.
Sure. I'm McCaskey & Associates Insurance Agency. I'm at 820 Greenbrier Circle in Chesapeake, right near the Chesapeake Conference Center. You can reach me at 757-622-6450 or go to my website, www.mccaskeyins.com.
Good deal. Well, thank you. I appreciate it.